Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I am back with a slightly somber but also what I hope will be a sweet and loving tribute to Her Late Majesty the Queen. Of course, I will miss her a great deal. I am excited to see what Charles is going to do as we go forward. And it got me thinking about a couple of books that had really been calling to me in the past couple of weeks. So I thought I would tell you about some reading that you can do about our modern royal family. If this video intrigues you and you'd like me to do a second one about royals from other countries and other eras, also let me know down below and I will put that on my list for a future video. But today I have 6 book recommendations if you'd like to do a little timely reading along with me. The first is a book that I just started, by which I mean I'm on page 1. I really have very little idea of what this book is going to turn out to be. But I have read others of the author's works, so that gives me a good baseline, I think, to go from. And that is The Queen and I by Sue Townsend. And this was written in 1992, I think. And it posits the idea that what if the government voted to abolish the monarchy in the UK at that time? And Buckingham Palace was turned into general housing, turned into flats, and that the royal family had to get used to living in council flats like everyone else. And the huge adjustments that everyone would have to go through on both sides of that equation. Sue Townsend also wrote the Secret Diaries of Adrian Mole, aged 13 and a half series. And I read 1 or 2 of those, so I know that she is a very funny writer. So this is clearly not meant to be serious at all. So I'm intrigued to see where this will go and if it gives us an insight into the everyday workings of the royal family. It's also very interesting to read 30 years later, given that for much of my life, Princess Diana was not in the picture, but she was when Sue Townsend wrote this, so it'll be interesting to see what sorts of dynamics she plays with. Another more realistic look at the Queen's life is the play The Audience by Peter Morgan, and I was lucky enough to see this when it came to New York in 2015 with Helen Mirren playing the Queen, and it looks at the Queen's life through the lens of audiences that she has, weekly audiences, with all of her prime ministers. And so it shows you at least one audience with each of the prime ministers that she had had over the then 60 years that she had been on the throne. But it also gives you brief glimpses into her childhood and her as a young girl coming to terms with the fact that one day she was going to be in charge of the country and all of the conflicting emotions that that brings up in a very young girl. And I thought this was really wonderful at the time, so I'm hoping to reread it this month. Well, reread. It'll be a first time reading the physical book, but I've seen it before. Plays are confusing. But nonetheless, I hope to revisit it and re-enjoy it, I hope. The next play is one that I did not go to see, even though it did come to New York, and now I'm really disappointed that I didn't. But I have at least read it, and it was turned into a television film as well. I think it was one of the last things that Tim Pigott-Smith did before he unfortunately passed. And that is the play King Charles III by Mark Bartlett, which used to sound a lot stranger. It's very eerie knowing that this is actually the title of our current monarch. This again came out around 2015, 2016, and it was Mike Bartlett thinking about what would it be like when Charles eventually inherited. Again, very eerie to say now that he actually has. But also writing it as though it were a Shakespearean history. There are lots of tortured monologues, lots of iambic pentameter. Kate, I think, is framed in sort of a Lady Macbeth way, which is very interesting. I don't always like the play's views, but I think it is so fascinating as a whole and as a concept. So if you are also interested, I would really recommend reading it or watching it if you can get a hold of it. Next, for some fictional looks at the Queen that are slightly more light-hearted, there's first The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett, which I do own, but a friend of mine has been borrowing it for about a year now. Really need to get him to give that back to me. But nonetheless, I have read it before. And it is a very sweet short story in which the Queen finds a bookmobile, I think, while she is taking one of her corgis on a walk, and discovers a new author, and this leads to all kinds of very small, but in other ways really huge, change for her. It's probably under 100 pages, but it is so sweet. I would highly recommend checking it out. Another one that I have not read, but that comes highly recommended from my mother, is The Windsor Knot by S.J. Bennett, I believe. And this is a series of mysteries which casts the Queen as a detective. This first one, I believe, takes place in 2016. And in preparation, or in the run-up to a big event, royal event, one of the guests is found dead, and the Queen ends up trying to solve this person's murder with the help of her faithful corgis and occasionally Prince Philip. My mother absolutely loved it. They're very sweet mysteries and a really cute look at, again, the Queen's interior life, possibly. If you're looking for some nonfiction, of course there are hundreds of biographies of the Queen, and there are some that are absolutely fabulous. In a slightly different vein than that, however, there is the book Our Times by A.N. Wilson. A.N. Wilson is a huge British historian, and this is a really interesting premise, I think. I haven't read this one yet, but I recently picked it up at a library book sale. And it's a history of modern Elizabethan Britain. It's a look at the most recent Elizabethan age and the huge, huge changes that took place across Britain during Queen Elizabeth's then 50-year reign. So it looks at the range between 1952 to 2002 when it was published. And I can't wait to read it, but it is a monster, so I'm not going to get to it right away. But if you're looking for some nonfiction to read, that could be a good place for you to go. So those are my recommendations if you too would like to honor the Queen's passing by reading something about her, be it fiction or nonfiction. Let me know down below if you have other recommendations for me on this topic, because this isn't just going to be a September thing for me. I think this is going to continue into the future as well. Like I said, if you would also like one of these videos with reading recommendations about other royals as well, let me know and I will cast that as a future video plan. And until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.